Hello, welcome to London Glass Blowing. My name is Tim Rawlinson. We're going to be doing an exhibition tour of Peter Layton's solo show, A Kind of Magic. I'm here with Peter.
The magician.
Maestro. To give us a bit more depth and understanding of the works he's created. If you've got any questions at any point, please put it in the chat. I think that there is an exhibition catalogue as well that's in there if you want to get a bit more detail on the work that's available and prices, etc. So you should find that all in the below chat. I'd like to start with this poppy installation. I think it's absolutely fabulous. I love that you've done them more in maybe just one colour previously, red and blue, but you've got this lovely merging of reds, yellows and oranges, and it's this lovely fade between the colours and huge, really nice volume of work.
I've called this installation Californian poppies, which do come in a variety of colours, and I'm very pleased with it. And I think the actual the way we've arranged it seems to work quite well. It's had a very good response. We may even have a customer in the offing, but should that happen, we're very happy to take commissions for any of these, for yellow, red, orange ones. Having said that, these colours are now extremely difficult to get. They're expensive, and
well, there's a lot of developments with the glass companies in terms of producing colour, isn't there? It's sort of certain colours become no longer available and discontinued, and you've had to adapt.
That is a problem, certainly. Finding a really good red has been a problem throughout the life of the studio, really. We did find one that was outstanding, produced by a Czech manufacturer, but unfortunately they discontinued producing colours for glass blowers. Their main activity was making buttons, I think, and there was a good market for that, so the colour went by the board.
It's a bit like you used Klein's blue, Layton's red.
I wish, yeah. No, there are a whole variety of reds and near reds here, and even one or two of them are even quite translucent.
Yeah,
and
like this one, it fades through, so you get the translucency on the edge. It's really interesting.
But as Tim said, a lot of work has gone into creating these centres, and similarly, we made sunflowers. We've done sunflowers. Incidentally, these pieces don't have to go on the wall. We have a very nice fitting, very simple fitting, which anybody can install, even I could install, but they look perfectly well as a table centerpiece. They can be, they're basically dishes with feet.
They make a very nice centerpiece. You seem constantly drawn back to the poppy. It seems to be, since I've known you, something that's constant theme in your work, or at least more than a motif, but certainly
I think, well, to tell you the truth, it did start out very much, and it happened long before the poppies at the Tower of London. I mean, it was originally, I saw it as very much a symbolic form. It was actually, I think the first poppy installation I did was while we were fighting while there was fighting going on in Afghanistan, and I saw it very much as it is, through the whole poppy movement, as a kind of what could you call it, an homage to those who've fallen in battle and so on. And then because it was Afghanistan and there's this whole opium trade going on there,
yes,
I thought there was a double entendre there.
I see the link.
Yeah.
Well,
so
it's a very powerful motif of piece, obviously. It originates First World War, doesn't it? With the poppy fields.
It does. And I must admit, it's become more of a decorative element than how can I put it, a political or subversive statement, but
it's still as prevalent now though as in the Afghan war. So
yes, I'm sure that's true.
The sentiment rings true.
It has been fun just looking at the various shades that we've achieved, you know, and deciding, you know, which one might be one's favourite. You know, that's quite a nice. I quite like.
The negative space between them is quite key for you, isn't it? When you're looking at an installation like this.
I'm glad you mentioned that, Tim. It is. And sometimes it works better than other, but yes, that is a key thing. You know, the way these negative shapes work, the way the curves work against each other. You know, and these can be turned, of course, and so I try to find an interesting composition, basically, and that's what we've tried to achieve here, you know, variations in scale and colour and shape.
Well, it's one of my favourite ones of yours that you've done, I must say.
Thank you.
It's got a real presence to it.
Well, you mentioned Klein Blue. Tim's referring to an artist, Yves Klein, who worked almost entirely in a very vibrant blue, and I've been going through, as it were, a blue period too. So these are, I suppose, an example of a fairly simple application of a very intense blue, by contrast with the reds of the poppies, and it's simply a group of fairly organic, basically vases, I suppose, cone-shaped vases.
Is the form supposed to, does it reflect bamboo? Was that one of the origins?
I think there is an element of that, and there is another group that we'll come to as we walk around that do have that connotation, or more of that connotation. But we'll talk about those when we get there, if we may. Yeah.
And these are sort of like clear fronts of glass that are forced inside of the form when it's hot, isn't it? So that's not flat. It's got a very tactile quality to it.
And the glass is, it's not pierced, but it's pushed into the interior of the form. And in some cases it might join. If one were to, I could see that if these were to be used as vases, those internal joins or interstices or whatever you want to call them might be quite useful for holding up the stems, you know. We don't tend to make that many vases, but looking around I do see there are quite a few in this exhibition.
Well, it's sort of
perhaps useful.
A vessel is, you know, interpreted in many.
It's a vessel.
A vessel is a vessel.
Yeah.
Can we talk about these leaf forms?
Yes. So this is blue leaf, and again that blue's made an appearance. If we look beside the group beside that, up there,
the black, yellow, and green.
Yes. So that's black leaf. These leaf shapes, or these leaf patterns, if you like. I don't know.
So the colour's been distorted through the middle, creating that lovely break in the lines. This gives it sort of an optical jarring, but is that the sort of the leaf pattern, almost like an internal stem of a leaf that runs through?
That's yes, thank you. Yes, that's more or less it, I suppose. There's I enjoy it when the colour becomes slightly offset in some way. I mean, if we turn one of these forms round, it works in some areas, not in others. But it's
and that pair has been acid etched, so it's not got that gloss.
Yes, that's correct. Yes, that's a matte finish on that surface, and they seem to have, people have responded to these. They've had they have quite an impact when you walk into the gallery, don't they?
They remind me of a series of yours from before I was here.
This is a matte version, whereas the rest of these haven't been etched in the same way. And it's a constant battle, really. It's not really a battle, but one has from time to time to make the decision. Do I etch this or don't I?
Gloss or matte?
Yes, gloss or matte. Not everybody likes the matte surface. I tend to love it. In fact, the next group.
I think that's the ceramicist in you.
It is. You're quite right. It is. As a potter, I always loved matte glazes. I tended to use matte glazes rather than shiny. I suppose as a glassmaker, you think, well, dirty or finger marks show up on a gloss thing more than they do. I mean, this is so delicious. The surface is so silky, and
but it also has that sparkle. It's matte, but it's trying too hard to capture on the camera, but it's got the sparkle of the glass still. That's really quite unique.
It doesn't always work like that, Tim. The etch can. You just have to catch it at the right moment. We don't use hydrofluoric acid. It's incredibly dangerous. It's what historically people used for an acid. This is called sugar acid. It's a recipe that I discovered years and years ago. I think I got it from Anna Dickinson, who worked in the studio those days. Anna is one of the foremost glass artists in the country, and most of her work goes straight to Switzerland, to a gallery there. Sadly, we're not quite in her league, but you're right, this has got a very beautiful sheet. I agree.
Where it catches the light.
Where it catches the light. Now, that is not, I can't always achieve that.
Your lava series has got the same surface treatment, that etch. That
yes, right? And you can actually, I don't know if you can tell.
The blue really catches.
The blue has that beautiful sparkle, that very soft sparkle, whereas the orange background or the orange colour doesn't have it. It's got a slightly drier quality, but
well, the colour is directly on the surface, isn't it? So it can react with the acid.
It is. Yes, if that were to be cased, in other words, to have another clear gather of glass over the top, it would end up looking quite fuzzy in a way, foggy almost.
It wouldn't have the same definition.
No, it wouldn't. Exactly right. And the colour wouldn't be so vibrant.
No.
No.
And this series is called Lava?
Yes, it is. I'm really pleased with it. We've just, unfortunately, they aren't in the exhibition because they're still in the annealing oven, in the kiln, that we cool the glass down in. We cool our glass over 2 days, and so we've made a couple of magnificent, very large versions of this. Of course, I say the magnificent, I say the large. These things it's a bit like the fish that got away when you open the kiln door, the annealing oven door. The pieces often seem to have shrunk. And they aren't always as spectacular as you thought they were. But I'm optimistic. I'm keeping my fingers
I think these ones were pretty spectacular.
I think they looked pretty good when they went in, yes.
Of course, these actually, they kind of remind me of my student days when I had a lava lamp of these sort of globules that go up and down.
Oh, yes.
Like these melting globules of colour moving.
Well, I'm not sure that was not why I called it lava. It was much more to do with the coloration and the idea of sort of lava flow. Some of the forms, and we may not have those anymore, they may have been so, there was more of a sense of, as in this one really, of the flow, of the form. Maybe, yeah, okay. I know I shouldn't go into raptures about tiny little things like, these are actually bubbles that have melted, and the white that's underneath the blue. We've covered in order to create the vibrance of this particular blue, this lovely purpley colour, we've put a transparent blue over white. And these are tiny little examples of the white breaking through, and I absolutely love them. I mean, if I could actually achieve that effect all over a piece, I think I would. I'd be in seventh heaven.
You've got the same sort of effect on the Dapple pieces, which is similar colour way to the lava, but
so orange and blue seem to have been my thing for a while now.
Did this start in Morocco? Was this when you visited?
That was the beginning. Yes. There was a series called Marrakesh, and these are all developments of that. And actually, after the event, I began to think about Yayoi Kusama, the Japanese 90-odd-year-old Japanese artist, whose entire oeuvre is about dots, spots, and
well, you would have seen her pieces in Japan.
I did see. I love her work. I think it's amazing. But I didn't set out. That wasn't the intention when I set out. And in fact, the dots are really quite difficult to do. They often turn into these lozenge shapes, almost bean shapes. And I have got, we have begun to master achieving white dots, but I do love the little circles we were looking at. I think I've got another piece we can look at where those are prevalent. So these are little paperweights, little sea urchin shapes. I'm not sure they were in the exhibition originally, but anyway.
Very tactile.
Yes. Oh, yeah, they are. That's true. That's true. And this is a piece I'm very fond of. It's one of the few that we've made quite open so that you can see the inside quite clearly. And I think this translucent form with the dots on the outside is absolutely gorgeous. I mean, this is the kind of takeoff point that one might read, for further development. So to see the outside of that, I can show you that too. But I actually think it's beautiful on the inside. Who knows? There might be a wall installation of these forms sooner or later.
Oh, a plateau variation.
Yeah. Where to next, Tim?
Would you like to talk about these Burano skylon forms?
Yes, I'd be happy to talk about those.
So, the Burano series was something that you worked on extensively for quite a period of time, quite closely with Elliot Walker from the Resident Artists here, where these very finely thin threads of white glass, it's almost like the lace that was made in Burano, it was sort of the parallel.
So they grew out of an exhibition we had in 2014, which was called Vetro, and it was an homage to the Muranese skills and traditions. And the idea was that each of us, all the participating artists, and all the people here, were in that show.
Well, Vetro 2's coming.
Yes, we're repeating this exercise. It was so successful that we've decided to do it again.
That was a brilliant show.
It was a brilliant show, and not only that, it stimulated so many ideas and directions, of which this was one. And I'm still enjoying variations on this theme. So, as Tim said, it's like Glassmaker's Pun. Murano is the place where the glass is made, but Burano, the neighbouring island, is where lace is made, and I tried to bring the two together. So
and these are solid forms, aren't they?
Yes, these are solid forms. I'll turn this one. Oh, perhaps you've seen it. The quality of the lace work is, in my opinion, and Elliot had a huge part in that, is superb. These are as good as it gets, really. I've got one or two other pieces that will come to soon, which also have wonderfully fine lattice
I love how it refracts in the top as well. You've got that large amount of clear glass. And it just echoes up into the clear form.
Well, I don't know if that'll come over with the camera, but are you seeing it? Okay. So that's another preoccupation. That's another thing I've been very interested in, and it's grown out of making these pieces, of course. Also, I thoroughly enjoyed working in a foundry, modelling these.
They're all bespoke bases, aren't they?
Yes, they are. And they all come apart, they all unscrew.
And the material is
solid bronze.
Solid bronze.
So that they don't have to be shiny like this, they could be patinated. And I have that in mind, that I might even do that actually, so that this could end up being green and this, or brown, and this could be, you know.
Is the form from, was one of the initial points the sort of skylon thing? Was that?
I think that might be a little after the event.
Okay.
You know, it's always very difficult to work out how you want to title pieces. And I was around when, although I never came to, what was that exhibition called?
Great Exhibition?
God, it slipped my mind anyway. Skylon was the central architectural feature. It was in Battersea Park in the late 50s, I think, and it was a form not dissimilar to this, and it was suspended. And so I have to say, but I like this. I love this idea of suspending a form within the form.
Encapsulated.
Encapsulating, yes, exactly. Nicely put.
But so, there was also sort of an Indian thing, wasn't there, of the smaller form?
Well,
was that yes. Starting point, your trip to India?
Yes, I mean, in a former life in Rotherhithe or maybe at the leather market, I was very interested in tantric forms.
Okay.
Ancient Indian tantric shapes, and this smaller piece is a leftover one of that.
Sort of echoes that.
Echoes that, yeah. Oh, lovely. Nice. So, shall we carry on round?
Yes, please. What would you like to talk about next?
Well, while we're here, let's just look at this briefly. This is another very...
It's got that lovely white dot in the middle.
Yeah, yes. It's got these incredible circles. I just couldn't... I couldn't engineer those.
It's almost like a Marini or a piece of cane, isn't it?
I suppose it is. It's also
lovely detail.
It also makes me think of the painter Miro.
Yes.
And as people who've been aware of my work over time know that I've been influenced a lot by painters.
Mm.
And as I said earlier, if I could, maybe Marini are the answer. Maybe that's the way to go. Maybe that's a thought. That would be very appropriate for the next Vetro, wouldn't it?
It would be.
So very simple Marini. Normally Marini are very complex, or the way that they're applied often is extraordinarily complicated. Maybe very simple Marini. I like that idea. Thanks, Tim. Tim's very. Yeah. So more of the black leaf. Slightly different yellow, trying different variations on that theme. And these are all matte. So we've been looking at, actually, the sparkle on that particular one is great, isn't it?
Wonderful.
Yeah. And above are some pieces that we've made specifically to support the Ukrainian war effort. So a proportion of the, we're donating a proportion of the sales of these pieces to towards the Ukrainian resistance of the invasion.
That's great.
And we have a few more of those. We made a limited run of those, and they're all quite unique pieces.
Well, referring back to the poppies, sort of anti-war sentiment has been quite key to a lot of your work over time, isn't it?
It comes up, Game of Life, and when I was a ceramicist, perhaps the most spectacular pieces I made were two huge, enormous red flames. They were, about this height with a charred world in the middle, and I called that piece End All War. And I remember a journalist writing it up, and his take on it was the black ball suspended between the two flame-like elements was the charred remains of the world.
World on fire.
I must say, with the current temperatures, I think, and maybe it was a rather prophetic piece. I hate to think so, but
it sounds quite spectacular.
It was, yeah.
Do you want to discuss? I mean, I hope everyone's dealing with the current heat wave well where they are. I mean, no, I know all over the world. Here in London, it's been pretty constantly hot for I don't know, at least 6 weeks really. And doing what we do with the glass blowing studio, those temperatures can get sort of 50 degrees in excess. So we're having to be very careful about how we manage what we do, and if it's a sign of things to come, it's going to become increasingly more challenging, isn't it?
Well, we're not working tomorrow. Temperatures are going to be up to what, 35? So we've decided not to work tomorrow. We worked today, and it was pretty hot. We had a couple of days off when we got to 40.
Yeah.
But it is a problem. It's again, talking being prophetic. In one of the books we published some years ago, or that was published about us, Andy McConnell of Antiques Roadshow fame wrote an essay which was, "You don't know what you've got till it's gone." The title was something like that. And he was talking about the future of glassmaking in the West. That actually, it's a threatened species, really, well, I suspect.
With the energy crisis combining with,
we are surviving, but it's tough. Yeah, it's tough. And having said that, I suppose that would be an opportune moment to say thank you to all our supporters, to all the people who support us by buying our work primarily, I suppose, but yes, just helping us to pay our bills, as it were. But anyway, enough of that. Let's move on. Now, shall we look at this?
Yeah,
this is a piece Tim helped me to make. So, and it's one I'm really, really fond of. So it's a turn.
So this is a cast piece composed of blown elements?
Yes, exactly. So it was hot worked prior to being cast.
The blues, so luscious. Really,
and the reflections are so good. I love the reflections in the polished surfaces.
So all of the surfaces have been ground and polished. So that's how you get that refractive quality in the glass. You're casting a piece, which essentially means making a mould to then put the glass inside of to get hot in a kiln. All of the outside will be frosted and uneven, so when the glass is cold, using machinery will make it perfectly flat and then work the surface to get that highly polished finish. It takes weeks and weeks for a piece like this, and you have to be particularly careful of the fine point. Something very thick to something very fine, and it's very easy for a piece like that to be damaged in the finishing process.
And the wooden base is a new addition to the piece. This is in the catalogue without its base, and it can be. You don't have, if somebody's interested, they don't have to have the base. But I quite like it. It's beech, and it's, as it were, made to measure, and I'm very pleased with it. I like the way it looks.
I think at the moment you're seeing the swirls of colour within. So that's achieved from the casting process. These are actually solid bits of colour, but once it gets molten inside of the kiln, you get that flow and liquid-like quality within the colour. And then once temperature drops, that movement is frozen, and you get this beautiful encapsulated movement within.
A customer I spoke to about it a day or so ago saw it as a wave, and I thought that I liked that.
The white froth.
Yes, and like the crest of a wave almost. Yeah. So it's probably one of the best pieces in the show. I'm very fond of it. I like it a lot. Yeah.
And the base, if you come around here, Anthony, you can see this beech base that Peter's had made by woodmaker called Graham Reeves. It echoes the profile of the pyramid, which is very lovely. It follows that continuously down.
Looking at this photograph of this piece, I mean, it absolutely does look like a wave, doesn't it? A wave cresting. It's beautiful, lovely. Really nice. So, yeah, patting ourselves on the back here, but really it's a spectacular piece.
No, it's a beautiful piece.
I can see a bit of yellow in there. I don't know what that is. Oh yeah, I see.
I mean, the nice thing about that process is the element of lack of control, the chaoticness. So they are, totally one-off in that way. You can choose the colours, you can choose the form, but the flow inside of the kiln is out of your control.
Out of control, out of our control. I agree. I like that Zen-like lack of control, certainly lack of control. So the form is very controlled, as you say, but what's going on internally is, slightly chaotic. Yeah.
That's a great juxtaposition.
Yeah. So another series, which I've called Marble, partly because I remember as a kid, the wonderful twists you saw inside marbles, but also it was rather to do with the marbling, the process of marbling ink on paper.
So sort of pulling a tool through inks and water and creating that.
Those sort of
rhythms.
Patterns. Yes, rhythms and patterns, exactly.
They're very bright, vibrant pieces. Almost like feathers, sort of like a peacock or a...
Yeah, it does look like, I mean, you can do that when you're icing a cake too, can't you? Just draw something through
So called the vanilla ones, they've always got that on top. Quite partial to one of those. That act of using the tool to distort the colour seems to be running through this show with the Leaf series, and then also with these jazz pieces. So behind you, Anthony, you've got these blue jazz pieces. So it's the same sort of process, is it?
Yes, so this particular group is called Jazz Patchwork, and relates to this kind of almost patchwork-like disruption of the trailing that's gone on. And if we come down here, this is another group, slightly different, and I think with these colorways, I was very taken. I have been very taken with Kente, which is a Ghanaian In fact, quite a bit of my work over the years has been influenced by textiles. We're right opposite the Textile Museum. Having said that, I don't get in there often enough, but so there was a series years ago called Kimono, and then there's this is actually a very bright version of a series I call Shibori, and that's a Japanese technique for distributing colour.
So there's quite a reference to fabric then.
I suppose in this exhibition in particular, there is. You're right. I do find textiles very inspirational. I often see customers come in wearing dresses that I want to. On occasion, I've asked if I might photograph them. Yes, textiles are actually a great source of inspiration. So why don't we move on to these, which, I wonder, let's go and look at the clouds. Shall we look at the clouds?
Yeah, sure.
So one of the ridiculous things I tried to do over a number of years is to create glass clouds. I mean, it's just, why would you do such a thing? Anyway, look, the cloud.
I see why you take inspiration from such a beautiful form. You want about the complexity of interpreting something that's
something as fleeting as a cloud. I know, and making rather static versions of it, but actually it's an ongoing. I think I first did this I was lucky enough to go to the Czech Republic as British delegate at a symposium, a triennial symposium, a little bit like we used to call them the Glass Olympics, in a place called Novi Bor in northern Czech Republic, and my first attempt at clouds were done there. But every so often I feel ready to have a stab at it again, you know, in some other way, find some new way of trying to express some quality of the clouds.
Well, I guess the fact that it can be so hard to capture that quality and the ever-changing nature of clouds, then it makes sense to constantly be, you know, reinterpreting or approaching with a new vision, well, I'll say stratum, but I really love that with this one here, you've kept the glass at the back, and you can then see Peter's other work behind is sort of really beautifully optically morphed and distorted through it.
Yes, I can actually, from where I'm standing, I can see the poppies through there, and it's really nice. You're right, it's good. And I love the thicks and thins of these shapes.
So these have been cut and polished, so the surface has got a hot side and then a cold work polished side.
Yes.
And then mounted onto a base.
And in this case, the base is glass, black glass, although sometimes, you know, sometimes I use black acrylic, but these happen to be on black glass.
So just to elevate it, or is it?
Yeah.
Also gives something that large stability. I mean, I don't know if you can tell, but these are very substantial pieces. If you sort of see my hand on this one, you can see that it's a very large piece of glass, and particularly thick as well.
And enormously heavy on the end of a blowing iron. Enormously heavy. And if you think that 2/3 of that piece has been cut away, so when it was a solid form, actually if you come round the back here, Anthony, if you wouldn't mind, you can get a sense of how three-dimensional the back of that piece is. somebody's bought that piece, so they were kind enough to leave it here for the duration of the exhibition. But I'm really pleased. I've only made two where I've kept the back, and both of those have people have really liked both of those. So I suppose that's something I may.
I think that'd be worth
more
exploring.
Of. Yes, I think so too. Thank you. Yeah, I agree. Well, talking of clouds, I mean these very, very heavy solid forms look like boulders are another version of the clouds, believe it or not. So this is black cloud with lightning bolts. I guess those are the yellow elements, and some of this was pre-made. Well, the lightning bolts were pre-made, and then they were stuck into the hot glass during the process, and then we did what's called casing with a huge gather, and this is a very heavy piece indeed. But again, as Tim said earlier, I absolutely adore the distortions and the optical effects that you achieve. In other words, if I look at this piece, there's a little blue enclosed element, but I can see it down here and up here and over there. And that's true of this piece too. As you move around, it
needs that engagement, doesn't it? It needs you to sort of wonder and explore visually what is occurring.
What's going on? Yeah, what's happening?
Is it real?
Yeah.
Is it an illusion?
And parts of it are magnified, and parts of it are a real size.
They're very satisfying, these sort of amorphous forms, aren't they? They've got lovely sort of tactile qualities.
And they're also quite warm, aren't they?
Yeah, they've absorbed the heat today, that's for sure.
Yeah. So,
these are very technically challenging pieces, these, aren't they? To get, because you've got that Burano fine network of lines, the colour and size, then the inserted forms to then gather cleanly over and keep it as neat and as
and actually not have it all crack apart, because if there's any incompatibility in the colour, you've had it. I mean, just the least incompatibility, and the piece wouldn't survive. But I am really enjoying standing here looking at there's blue up here. Well, of course, there's no blue. And looking at these translucent, what I call bolts.
I'm enjoying the network of lines and how they refract and move about.
Oh yes, yeah, they do move as you move.
It's a kinetic piece. It just evolves in that way. It's lovely.
They're called Burano clouds with lightning. So, where do we go next, Tim? Oh, there's a chess set here. This might be nice. One of the things I've really tried to, or been interested in for a long, long time, with pieces like this sculptural object, like the Game of Life, with standing stone groups, well, even juxtaposing some of these vessel forms or cloud forms, is the idea that the person who buys this or who owns it can interact with it, and a chess set is an obvious way of changing a composition, and playing with the form, and people walking in have enjoyed doing that. And this board too is lovely. It's goat skin and parchment. It was made by a leather craftsman here in London for me, and I again, it's been much admired, I'm glad to say. It's quite an undertaking, but anyway, I might, I think someone may have commissioned an orange and blue version.
Oh,
on
really?
the basis of some of the you know, some of the pieces they've seen.
That is your colour theme of the year, it seems.
It is, yeah.
No, I really like that element of interaction, and then it's not something that's just to be sat, admired, or looked at, but be involved with. Playfulness, and you've got that as well with your abacus that's on the wall.
Yes, that's another example of
the interactive quality of some of your installations.
Again, yes. So the idea is that whoever has that on their wall can change the composition. Well, I mean, you know, in a limited way with this particular composition, but these can all be moved to a greater or lesser extent, and turned around to change the you know, these can, so this perhaps some move easier than others, but
it's almost like contour lines on a map.
I think there was, yeah, I do love that quality, and in a way, there's almost forerunner of the leaf. I mean, this is an earlier piece. By the way, this frame that the abacus is, the frame of the abacus is Corian. It's a really nice material to work with. It comes in lovely colours like this, and I mean, originally I had thought it might be wood or metal, the frame, but I have enjoyed. Yes, well, I'm glad you noticed that interactive thing. So here are some more Burano pieces. How are we doing for time? Are we all right? Oh, good. Okay, well, we'll speed up a bit. So these are some new versions of Burano. We're still feeling our way with these. This is less of a cloud form than a boulder, I suppose, but here I've tried to create distortions in a different way. Yes, like exactly. If you, these are magnified. This one's distorted by movement, and it's been enjoyable. I'm working with a new glassmaker. Elliot's busy setting up his own studio up in the Stourbridge area. Elliot Walker, who won Blown Away, no longer works here, sadly, but I'm now working with someone else on this particular series, and I've been, you know, I'm pleased with the way it's going, and who knows where we'll end up.
It's almost a figurative quality to the taller forms.
Do you think?
Yeah, almost.
That's an interesting observation. Maybe that's something I do like the quite sort of craggy, organic feel of the piece. Yes. So then a couple of more smaller.
Can I ask you about the pieces behind you?
Yeah, I'll come back to those. Okay. But I just, while we're on this blue kick, as it were, you asked earlier about the bamboo.
Yes.
And these are what I've called them bamboo, but it's partly to do with the rate of expansion, or the fact that some colours are softer than others. So the blue is softer than the clear, and that form is partly quite natural as a result of the process, but it's also one that, having seen what was going on, we've tried to encourage. And again, it's a different way of using the, well, it's not exactly a network, but using this sort
of fine trailing.
Trailing over the blue, yes.
Well, the clear windows are great as well, where you sort of see through the underside.
Well, like having done the solid blue ones, I wanted to try to modify that blue in some way, and and I'm quite pleased with the way it's turned out. And you know, it may well be that I think I will try this method of working with other forms. Maybe you're having pointed out the sort of almost anthropomorphic quality of the work. Here's another cloud, by the way. Here's another cloud. Actually, this is
this is part of your residency in Tacoma in America.
It was, yes. So I went to Tacoma. I was on a residency there for a week. Sadly, I think I did my back in after a couple of days, so that was I had to fight. I had to work my way through that. Anyway, I woke up the first day I was there. I was intending to do one thing, but I woke up and saw Mount Rainier from my hotel window, and it was shrouded in clouds. So I set about making a series based on that, and this is one of those. And here we've got another cloud with lightning bolts made, but that was made elsewhere. That was made with James Devereux.
So those are all individual blown forms to compose of the clouds.
Oh yes, these are. Yes, these are made in an opalescent white. There's an iridescent one there. It's not exactly a silk cloud with a silver lining, but it is iridescent. It's a gold, almost a gold lining. Now, quite freely made cloud forms. Some of them are delicious on their own account. And here are some more clouds. You must be getting bored with clouds, but there are a couple of little small ones that I'm quite pleased with. Again, made in conjunction with James Devereux down at his studio in Wiltshire.
It's a key sort of way that you work, isn't it, with other glass makers and enjoying that sort of collaborative process.
Very much so. I mean, glass making is a collaborative process, always has been. Well, pretty much always has been. There were itinerant glass makers who went their own way, and the early studio glass movement had some sort of ethic of do it yourself, but that soon went, because the complexity of what we're making and doing, it's very difficult to do some of these things entirely on your own. I mean, impossible, in fact. This is another series called Black Jazz, another version. We've made very few of these because they're extremely difficult to make. Again, it's to do with some colours being softer than others, or some colours being harder than others. So it means it's very difficult to control the form.
There's a real alchemy of the colour, isn't there? The fact that the chemical makeup is so different, you might either get a reaction between them, or like you say, some are more complicated to work with than others.
And again, managed to achieve some really nice reds here. This is a red over an orange, which is really vibrant, and it's something, again, that I think I will explore, the idea of backing it up like that. And with this one, this is matte, and we've experimented with different blacks in order to try to make it possible.
The undulations in the colour are fantastic. It really makes it 3D on the sort of flat surface.
Do you mean in the surface here?
Yeah.
Yes, that's true. These things.
Sort of ribbons of colour. It's very effective. Like I say, it seems to be, to me, a theme of this show. Of it, well, to myself, reflecting textiles, that sort of patchwork quality, but these ripples and distortions of colour, rather than it being a sort of very flat object, the way that you've put these lines through it, creating a much richer...
It's almost three-dimensional sometimes, isn't it? The way the colour actually...
I just love how the lines they're broken, they don't flow evenly. It's really effective.
So you wanted to talk about these, didn't you, Tim?
Well, yeah, this is sort of something that you've only been developing quite recently, of playing about with a luster.
Yes, these are earlier pieces, kimono coral forms. One of the best things I've ever done was to go to the Barrier Reef, and I absolutely adored it. And I'd been in Japan at about the same time. I think it was the same trip actually, and I must have gone to Japan from Australia. I can't quite remember, or vice versa. So, so I made these coral forms in black and white. We called them kimono. But these were in my archive, and I found them recently, and we decided to highlight some of these openings to gild the piece in some with gold leaf or silver leaf or copper leaf, and some where we've used paints, and I will do some where I'll be using lusters which are fired into the pieces. So these are quite experimental.
Well, you had quite a few more, but they sort of sold straight away.
They did. People seem to like them, which is great. I mean, that's what we're here for, and you know, it's easy to become, as I do, very precious about the pieces and think, oh, I don't want to part with that. But
it's how we're able to continue, isn't it?
Yes, it's how
it lets you make more.
And although we've got one of the bigger, better studios in the country, we still have limited storage area, and we, you know, just so to clear the shelves a little. Well, any other questions? Are there any questions? I mean, there
was a question which was, what do you feel is the most successful new work of the show, or maybe one thing you're most pleased or proud of?
Gosh, well, I mean, I'm very pleased with the way the show looked altogether.
You should be proud of the whole show, Peter. I think it's spectacular.
We worked very, very hard through up against, you know, temperatures, formidable temperatures and things to get it all together. I suppose the poppy installation is particularly. I think that's worked really well.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
And I'm very, very pleased with that. I've done a number of these poppy installations with a blue version, Mechanopsis, the Himalayan poppy, and look, they've all been good in different ways, but this is particularly successful, and I have to say you helped me with the installation, and I think it's worked really well. You know, I like working with you, and I have to say I think we did a good job. Yeah, and the gallery team did a marvelous job of installing the whole show. I'm thrilled with it.
It's a really significant body of work, and bringing it together like this isn't easy. So they've done a great task of really keeping a lovely flow throughout.
I hope if you're anywhere near us and the temperatures drop a little, you'll come and see it. It's probably better in the flesh.
Definitely.
And we're here. It's here for another couple of weeks. And if you can't, as Tim said, there is a catalogue online, and we'd love to hear from you. And I think we're running pretty much out of time. So thank you for being with us. I hope it was interesting and that you've enjoyed it. And I hope you've enjoyed seeing the work.
And thank you, Peter. It's great to get insight into this work you've done, and also being here in these hot conditions. You yourself are doing very well, so thank you.
Thank you. Well, thanks for being along for the ride, Tim.
Very welcome.